There are two footprints on two different worlds. One footprint is pressed into the lunar dust of the Sea of Tranquility, 384,400 kilometers from Earth. It was made by an American boot on July 20th, 1969. The tread pattern is still there, frozen in time, untouched by wind or rain, because there is no wind or rain on the moon. In the airless silence, that print could last for 1,000,000 years. It is a testament, a mark that says, "We were here." The other footprint is invisible. It exists not in dust, but in the fabric of history itself. It was made on April 12, 1961, when a 27-year-old Russian farm boy named Yuri Gagarin climbed into a tiny metal sphere, strapped himself to the tip of a ballistic missile, and became the first human being to leave Earth and return alive. His journey lasted only 108 minutes, less than 2 hours, but in that brief span he crossed a threshold that humanity had been approaching since the first caveman looked up at the stars and wondered, "What is out there?" 2 men, 2 footprints, 2 nations locked in the most dangerous confrontation in human. This was the Cold War. A war fought not with bullets and bombs, though those were always ready, but with ideas, propaganda, and the desperate need to prove superiority. The Americans and the Soviets competed in everything: military strength, economic power, cultural influence. But the ultimate battleground was not on Earth. It was in the sky, in space, in the void. The space race was sold to the public as a scientific endeavor, a noble quest for knowledge. But underneath the rhetoric, it was raw, primal competition. Each rocket launch was a demonstration of power. Each satellite was a warning. We can reach you, we can destroy you. But here's what the politicians and generals didn't count on. Here's what the propaganda machines on both sides couldn't control. The men who actually went to space, the pilots, the cosmonauts, the explorers, they weren't thinking about politics when they left the atmosphere. They weren't thinking about communism or capitalism, about Kennedy or Khrushchev. They were thinking about the sky, about the stars, about the dream they had carried since childhood. And when they looked back at Earth from the outside, when they saw that fragile blue sphere hanging in the infinite black, they realized something the politicians would never understand. We are not enemies. We are crewmates. Passengers on the same ship sailing through the cosmic ocean. Tonight we're going to walk beside 2 of those passengers, 2 men who should have been enemies, but who shared the same soul. We will stand with Yuri Gagarin in the frozen fields of rural Russia, where he first looked up at the sky and felt the call. We will stand with Neil Armstrong in the golden cornfields of Ohio, where he first understood that the sky was not a limit, but a door. We will follow them through war, through training, through terror and triumph. We will sit in their cockpits as they ride pillars of fire into the void. We will feel their loneliness, their awe, their fear. And in the end, we will discover that this was never a race at all. It was a passing of the torch, a shared human story written in fire and stars. Let the noise of the world fade now. Let the tensions and divisions fall away. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into the stillness. We are going back. Back to the beginning. Back to the moment when two boys looked up at the same sky and made a choice that would define their lives and change the course of human history. Close your eyes. The journey is about to begin. The year is 1941. Summer has just arrived in Western Russia, but you would not know it from the mood in the air. War has come. Not the distant abstract war you read about in newspapers, not the war but the real war. The war of fire and blood and screaming metal. The war that devours cities and spits out ghosts. Nazi Germany, Operation Barbarossa. 3 million soldiers pouring across the border like a plague. The Soviet defenses are crumbling. Entire armies are being The radio brings only bad news, when it brings news at all. But in a tiny village called Klushino, about 200 kilometers west of Moscow, a 7-year-old boy is not thinking about the war, not yet, not in this moment. He is standing barefoot in a field of wheat, his small face turned upward, his dark eyes squinting against the brightness of the morning sun. His name is Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin. The field around him is alive with the sounds of late spring. Crickets chirp in the long grass. Swallows dart and dive, hunting insects. The wheat sways in the warm breeze, creating a soft, rustling whisper, like the earth itself is breathing. The boy's feet are tough and calloused from a summer spent running barefoot. His hair is cut short, almost shaved because of lice, a constant problem in rural Russia. He wears a rough linen shirt that used to belong to his older brother, Boris. The fabric is worn soft from years of washing in the river. It smells of wood smoke and sunlight. Yuri is supposed to be helping his mother, and she is planting potatoes. Hard, back-breaking work that the whole family shares. But he has slipped away, drawn by something he saw in the sky. High above him, almost invisible against the pale blue dome of the heavens, is a small silver shape, an airplane. It is a Soviet bomber, a Tupolev TB-3, probably heading west toward the advancing German lines. The sound of its engines is a distant, rhythmic drone, a sound that seems to belong more to the sky than to anything made by human hands. Yuri watches it with the intensity that only a child can summon. His breathing is slowed. He is completely absorbed. He has seen airplanes before. This is 1941 after all, and the skies above Russia are full of them. Fighters, bombers, reconnaissance planes. But he has never stopped being amazed by them. He doesn't understand how they work, not yet, but he knows they are magic. How does something so heavy stay in the air? How do the pilots control it? What does the world look like from up there? Can you see our village? Can you see all the way to Moscow? The plane disappears over the horizon, swallowed by a bank of distant clouds. But the dream it leaves behind, the longing, the hunger, remains in the boy's chest, burning like a small coal. Yura, his mother's voice cuts through the field. She is calling from the vegetable garden behind their small wooden cottage. Her voice is sharp but not unkind. It is the voice of a woman who has too much work and not enough help. Yuri turns and runs back toward the house, his bare feet slapping against the hard-packed dirt path. His mother, Anna, is kneeling in the garden, her hands black with soil. She is a strong woman, broad-shouldered and tireless. Her face is weathered from years of sun and wind, but her eyes are kind. "Where did you go?" she asks, though she already knows the answer. Yuri is always disappearing, always chasing something, a bird, a cloud, an airplane. "I saw a plane, Mama," Yuri says, breathless with excitement. Do you think the pilot could see us?" Anna wipes her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt. She looks at her son, this small, dreaming boy, and feels a pang of something she cannot name. Fear? Pride? Sadness? "I don't know, my little one," she says softly. Maybe the pilot was looking down and thinking, "There is a boy in that field. I wonder what he is dreaming about." Yuri grins. "I was dreaming about flying, Mama. One day, I will be a pilot. I will fly higher than I will see the whole world." Anna's smile falters. She glances toward the west, where the war is creeping closer every day. She has heard the stories: entire villages destroyed, families torn apart, children left orphaned, starving in the ruins. She reaches out and touches Yuri's cheek. "First, you must help me plant these potatoes. Then we will talk." Yuri nods and kneels beside her, digging his small hands into the cool, dark earth. But his mind is still in the sky. 3 months later, the war arrives in Klushino. It is October now. The leaves have turned gold and red, and the air carries the sharp bite of coming winter. The harvest is over. The family has stored away potatoes, beets, and cabbages in the root cellar beneath their cottage. They have prepared for winter as they always do, but no, one can prepare for this. One grey morning, the sound, not airplanes this time, trucks, tanks, the rumble of heavy machinery rolling over the dirt road. Yuri and his siblings, Valentin, Zoya, and Boris, peer through the cracks in the wooden fence. They see German soldiers marching into the village square, dozens of them. They wear grey uniforms and carry rifles. Their faces are hard. The villagers are ordered out of their homes. They stand in the cold, shivering, while a German officer shouts orders in a language no one understands. The soldiers begin going through the houses, taking what they want: food, blankets, furniture, livestock. When they come to the Gagarin cottage, they take it over completely. The family is forced out. They are given no time to gather belongings, no time to protest. The villagers are ordered out of their homes. They stand in the cold, shivering, while a German officer shouts orders in a language no one understands. The soldiers begin going through the houses, taking what they want: food, blankets, furniture, livestock. When they come to the Gagarin cottage, they take it over completely. The family is forced out. They are given no time to gather belongings, no time to protest. Anna grabs Yuri's hand and pulls him away from the soldiers. "Come, quickly." The family flees to a small dugout behind the cottage, a crude shelter made of logs and earth, barely large enough for the 6 of them. It smells of damp soil and mildew. The floor is cold mud. There is no stove, no light, no comfort. For the next 2 years, this will be their home. Yuri learns what it means to be hungry. Not the temporary hunger of missing a meal, but the deep, gnawing hunger that never goes away. The hunger that makes you weak and dizzy. The hunger that makes you dream about food at night. They eat potato peels boiled in water, nettle soup, acorns ground into a bitter paste. Once, Yuri finds a dead crow in the snow. His mother cooks it. They eat every scrap, even the bones. He learns what it means to be cold, not the discomfort of a chilly day, but the bone-deep cold that makes you wonder if you will ever feel warm again. His feet turn blue. His fingers crack and bleed. He learns what it means to be powerless, to watch soldiers take his older brother and sister, Valentin and Zoya, and force them onto a transport truck. They are being sent to Germany, to labor camps. They are screaming, crying, reaching for their mother. But there is nothing the family can do. Nothing. The truck drives away. Yuri watches it disappear down the road, carrying his brother and sister into the unknown. He feels something harden inside him, a resolve, a defiance. One day, he thinks, one day I will be strong. I will fly above all of this. I will be free. There is one memory from the occupation that Yuri will carry with him for the rest of his life. It is early spring 1943. The snow is melting, revealing the muddy, wounded earth beneath. The war has turned. The Germans are retreating, but the fighting is still close. Artillery rumbles in the distance like approaching thunder. Yuri is playing near the edge of the forest when he hears a sound that makes his heart leap. An airplane engine sputtering and coughing. He looks up and sees a Soviet fighter plane trailing smoke, losing altitude fast. The plane crashes in a field about a kilometer away. Yuri runs toward it, his heart pounding. When he reaches the wreckage, he sees the pilot crawling out of the cockpit. The man is bloodied, dazed. His flight suit is torn. His face is black with soot. But he is alive. Yuri approaches slowly. "Are you hurt?" The pilot looks at him. This small, skinny boy with huge eyes and bare feet. He manages a weak smile. "I've been better, little one. The Germans will come soon. You have to hide." The boy leads the pilot into the forest. He takes him to a hollow tree where he and his friends sometimes play. It is well hidden, deep in the undergrowth. "Stay here," Yuri says. "I will bring you food and water." For 3 days, Yuri sneaks food to the pilot. Bread, a boiled egg, a piece of sausage stolen from the German supplies. The pilot recovers enough strength to walk. The village elders smuggle him out, guiding him east toward the Soviet lines. Before he leaves, the pilot kneels down so he is eye level with Yuri. He places a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You are a brave boy," he says. "You have the heart of a pilot. Maybe one day you will fly too." Yuri's eyes widen. "Do you think so?" "I know so," the pilot says. "You have courage, and courage is the most important thing for a flyer. Machines can be built, skills can be learned, but courage, that comes from the heart." He ruffles Yuri's hair and walks away into the forest. Yuri watches him go, and in that moment, the dream solidifies into something more than a fantasy. It becomes a goal, a mission, a destiny. "I will fly. No matter what it takes, I will fly." The American. Now let us cross the ocean. Let us leave the frozen mud of Russia and travel to a different kind of countryside, a place where the war feels distant, almost unreal, a place where the summer sun is hot and golden, where the cicadas sing in the trees, and where a boy can still dream without fear. The year is 1941, the same year, the same moment. But this is Ohio, America. Wapakoneta, a small farming town surrounded by flat fields of corn and soybeans that stretch to the horizon in every direction. The town has one main street with a general store, a post office, a barber shop, and a small movie theater that shows newsreels and westerns. Life here moves slowly, peacefully. On a white wooden porch at the edge of town, an 11-year-old boy sits cross-legged on the steps, his head bent over a notebook. His name is Neil Armstrong. He is a slender boy, quiet and intense. His hair is light brown, cut neatly above his ears. His eyes are pale blue, the kind of eyes that seem to be always calculating, always measuring. He wears simple clothes, dungarees, and a short-sleeved shirt. His hands are clean. His fingernails are trimmed. He is meticulous in all things. In his lap, the notebook is filled with drawings. Airplanes, not cartoon airplanes, not childish scribbles, but detailed technical sketches. He has copied them from photographs in Popular Mechanics and Aviation Week. He has drawn the wings, the fuselage, the landing gear. He has labeled the parts, ailerons, rudder, stabilizer. Neil is fascinated by the mechanics of flight, not just the romance of it, not just the thrill, but the how. How does an engine generate thrust? How do the wings create lift? What is the relationship between velocity and drag? He reads everything he can find about airplanes. He has checked out every aviation book in the tiny Wapakoneta Public Library, some of them multiple times. He subscribes to magazines with money he earns from his paper route. He listens to the radio broadcasts about the war in Europe, not for the politics, but for the descriptions of aerial dogfights. His father, Stephen Armstrong, steps out onto the porch. He is a quiet man, a state government auditor who travels frequently for work. He is wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up and a loosened tie. He carries a glass of cold lemonade. "Still working on your drawings?" he asks, sitting down beside Neil. "Yes, sir," Neil says without looking up. He is shading the shadow beneath the wing of a P-51 Mustang. "You really love those machines, don't you?" Neil pauses. He sets down his pencil and looks up at his father. He considers the question carefully, as he considers everything. "I don't know if love is the right word," he says slowly. "I want to understand them. I want to know how they work, and then I want to make them work better." Stephen smiles. He recognizes something in his son, a focus, a drive that is unusual for a boy his age. Most children Neil's age are playing baseball, fishing, running wild through the fields. But Neil is different. He prefers to be alone, working on his models, reading, thinking. "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Stephen asks. Neil doesn't hesitate. "An aeronautical engineer. I want to design airplanes, or fly them, or both." "That's a good dream," Stephen says. "If you work hard, I think you can do it." Neil nods. He picks up his pencil and returns to his drawing. For him, it is not really a dream, it is a plan, a logical sequence of steps. Study hard, go to a good university, learn engineering, get a pilot's license, build a career. He has already started working toward it. At the age of 9, he began taking flying lessons at the local airfield. He mows lawns, delivers newspapers, and does odd jobs to pay for the lessons. $9 per hour of flight time. It is expensive, but to Neil, it is worth every penny. His teacher is a crop duster named Mr. Brading, a leathery old man who chews tobacco and tells stories about barnstorming in the 1920s. Mr. Brading is impressed by Neil. Most kids are sloppy, impulsive. But Neil is careful. He checks everything twice. He asks questions. He learns fast. On Neil's 16th birthday, August 5th, 1946, he takes his pilot's exam. He passes on the first try. He receives his student pilot's license before he even has a driver's license. His mother, Viola, is terrified. Flying is dangerous, she says. You could get hurt. You could... She doesn't finish the sentence. But Neil understands. She is thinking about crashes, about death. I'll be careful, Mom, he says. I promise. I'll always be careful. And he means it. Neil is not a reckless person. He does not chase thrills. He does not take unnecessary risks. But he also does not let fear, because when he is in the air, something happens. Something changes. On the ground, the world is complicated. People are confusing. Social interactions are awkward. Emotions are messy and illogical. But in the air, everything makes sense. There are rules, physics, aerodynamics, cause and effect. If you pull back on the stick, the nose runs. If you push forward, it descends. If you bank left, it is predictable, logical, pure. In the air, Neil feels free, and once you have tasted that freedom, it is impossible to go back. Let us pause for a moment. Let us hover above the earth in the year 1946. The war is over. The world is rebuilding. The future is uncertain. Below us, in Russia, a 15-year-old boy named Yuri Gagarin is attending a vocational school in Moscow. He is learning to be a metal worker, a foundryman. His hands are rough and scarred from the hot metal and the heavy tools. But in his free time, he joins a flying club. He takes lessons in old, battered biplanes. He falls in love with the feeling of leaving the ground. Below us, in America, a 16-year-old boy named Neil Armstrong is attending Wapakoneta High School. He is a straight-A student, quiet and diligent. He plays the baritone horn in the school band. He is not popular, not outgoing, but he is respected. And on weekends, he rides his bicycle. They do not know each other. They have never heard each other's names. They live in different worlds, separated by language, culture, and ideology. They both wake up thinking about the sky. They both go to sleep dreaming of. They both look at the stars and wonder, how high can I go? How far? Neither of them knows it yet, but they are on a collision course. Not a violent collision, but a cosmic one. They are two comets hurtling through time, their trajectories aimed at the same point in history. And when they finally reach that point, when they both leave Earth and enter the void, They will change the world forever, but first they must be forged. They must be tested. They must pass through fire. Let us follow them. Let us watch as the boys become men and the dreamers become warriors. By 1950, the Soviet Union was a nation of survivors. The war, what the Russians called the Great Patriotic War, had killed 27 million Soviet citizens. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble. Entire generations had been wiped out. The land itself was scarred, pockmarked with craters and mass graves. But from the ashes, the survivors rebuilt. Factories rose. Apartments were constructed. Schools reopened. The Soviet propaganda machine worked overtime, broadcasting messages of triumph and resilience. We defeated the Nazis. We are strong. We are the future. Yuri Gagarin was one of those survivors. At 19 years old, he had already lived through occupation, starvation, and loss. His brother and sister had returned from the German labor camps, but they were changed, hollow-eyed and silent. The war had taken something from them that could never be returned. Yuri, too, was changed. But in him, the war had not extinguished the dream. It had hardened it, sharpened it, made it into something unbreakable. He enrolled in a technical school in Saratov, a city on the Volga River. He studied metalworking by day, but his heart was elsewhere. In 1954, he joined the Saratov Flying Club, a local organization that gave young people the chance to learn to fly. The planes were ancient, old Yak-18s, trainers from the war. The engines coughed and sputtered. The controls were stiff. The seats smelled of oil and sweat. But to Yuri, they were beautiful. His instructor was a gruff, chain-smoking veteran named Colonel Dmitri. On Yuri's first day, the colonel looked him up and down and said, "You're short." "That's good. Tall men don't fit well in cockpits." Yuri grinned. "Then I'm perfect, sir," the colonel grunted. "We'll see." Yuri's first flight was on a cool autumn morning. The sky was grey and overcast. The air smelled of rain. He climbed into the rear seat of the Yak-18. The instructor sat in front. The canopy closed with a heavy clunk. The engine roared to life. The whole plane vibrated. Yuri's heart pounded in his chest. They taxied to the end of the grass runway. The instructor pushed the throttle forward. The plane accelerated, bouncing over the uneven ground. Faster, faster, and then lift. The wheels left the earth. Yuri felt it instantly. The transition, the moment when the rules of the ground no longer applied. He was free, weightless. He looked out the window and saw the city of Saratov falling away below him. The Volga River snaked through the landscape like a silver ribbon. The fields and forests spread out in a patchwork of greens and browns. The sky opened above him, vast and limitless. Tears filled his eyes from joy. "This is it," he thought. "This is where I belong." From that day forward, Yuri flew every chance he got. He wasn't that. His instructors noticed it immediately. He had excellent reflexes, a steady hand, and most importantly, an unshakable calm under pressure. In 1955, he was accepted into the Soviet Air Force. He was sent to the Orenburg Pilot School, a prestigious training academy. The competition was fierce. The training was brutal, but Yuri thrived. He flew MiG-15 jet fighters, sleek, powerful machines, capable of speeds that would have been unimaginable just a decade earlier. He learned aerobatics, combat maneuvers, navigation. He learned to fly in bad weather, at night, in conditions that would terrify most pilots. But more than the technical skills, Yuri learned something else, something essential. He learned to trust himself. In the cockpit of a jet fighter, there is no time for doubt, no time for second guessing. You make a decision and you commit to it. Hesitation kills. Yuri discovered that he was good at this. When the alarms blared, when the plane shook, when the ground rushed up at him at terrifying speed, he did not panic. His mind became clear, crystalline. He saw the solution and executed it. His commanders took note. "This one is special," they said. "He has ice in his veins." But they were wrong. Yuri did not have ice in his veins. He had fire. A controlled, focused fire that burned at the core of. In 1957, he graduated at the top of his class. He was assigned to a fighter squadron in the far north near the Arctic Circle. It was a harsh, lonely posting. The winters were brutal, the nights endless. But Yuri did not complain. He flew his missions. He wrote letters to his family. He waited. He did not know what he was waiting for, but he knew something was coming. He could feel it. While Yuri was flying MiGs over the frozen tundra of northern Russia, Neil Armstrong was on the other side of the world, flying jets at speeds that pushed the boundaries of human endurance. After graduating from Purdue University in 1955 with a degree in aeronautical engineering, Neil was accepted into an elite program, the high-speed flight station at Edwards Air Force Base in California. This was the proving ground for America's most advanced aircraft. This was where test pilots pushed experimental jets to their limits, and sometimes beyond. Edwards was located in the Mojave Desert, a vast expanse of sand and rock and endless blue sky. The base was surrounded by dry lake beds, flat, hard surfaces perfect for emergency landings. The air was thin and dry. The sun was relentless. Neil loved it. The test pilots at Edwards were a breed apart. They were the best of the best, men who had flown combat missions, who had survived crashes, who had looked death in the face and walked away. They had swagger. They had confidence. They drank hard and drove fast and lived like there was no tomorrow. Neil was not like them. He did not drink. He did not brag. He did not socialize much. He was polite, professional, and almost painfully reserved. Some of the other pilots thought he was cold, distant, a computer with legs. But what they didn't understand was that Neil's reserve was not coldness. It was focus. He had no interest in the distractions of ego and bravado. He was here to do a job, to fly, to learn, to push the envelope, and push it he did. Neil flew the F-100 Super Sabre, a supersonic fighter jet capable of speeds over 800 miles per hour. He flew the F-104 Starfighter, a needle-nosed rocket with wings. He flew the X-1B, a research plane designed to study aerodynamics at high speeds. And then he flew the X-15, The X-15 was not really an airplane. It was a rocket with a cockpit. It was black, sleek, and deadly looking. It was carried aloft beneath the wing of a B-52 bomber, then dropped at 45,000 feet. The pilot would ignite the rocket engine and climb straight up toward the edge of space. The X-15 could reach speeds of over 4,000 miles per hour. It could climb to altitudes of over 50 miles, where the sky turned black and the curvature of the Earth became visible. At those altitudes, the air was so thin that the control surfaces, the ailerons and rudder, no longer worked. The pilot had to use small rocket thrusters to steer. It was the closest thing to spaceflight that existed in the 1950s. Neil flew the X-15 7 times. On one flight, in 1962, he climbed to 207,500 feet, over 39 miles high. He looked out the window and saw the blackness of space above him and the curved horizon of Earth below. In that moment, he understood something fundamental. This is not the limit. This is not the ceiling. There is no ceiling. The sky does not end. It just keeps going forever. But the X-15 was dangerous, incredibly dangerous. Several test pilots died flying experimental aircraft at Edwards. One of Neil's close friends, a pilot named Joe Walker, was killed when his F-104 collided with a B-70 bomber during a photo op. Neil attended the funeral. He did not cry. He stood silently, his face expressionless, while the coffin was lowered into the ground. Later, someone asked him how he dealt with the fear, how he climbed into those jets knowing that each flight could be his last. Neil thought for a moment, then said, "Fear is not useful. It doesn't help you fly better." So I set it aside. I focus on the systems, the procedures, the mission. If I've done everything correctly, the plane will perform. If I've made a mistake, I'll deal with it. But worrying accomplishes nothing. It was pure Neil, rational, logical, unemotional. But beneath that calm exterior, there was something else. A hunger, a drive, a need to go higher, faster, farther. In 1962, NASA announced that it was looking for a second group of astronauts to fly the upcoming Gemini and Apollo missions. The goal was clear: land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. Neil filled out the application. He submitted his test pilot records, his engineering credentials, his flight hours. He mailed it in, and then he waited. In the autumn of 1959, a secret letter was sent to Soviet Air Force bases across the USSR. It was addressed to commanding officers only. The contents were classified. The letter contained an invitation, or rather, a recruitment notice. The Soviet space program was looking for candidates to become cosmonauts, the first humans to fly in space. The qualifications were strict: male between 25 and 30 years old, no taller than 5'7", no heavier than 160 pounds, excellent physical condition, jet fighter pilot experience, and, most importantly, psychological stability. Thousands of pilots were screened. Only a handful were invited to Moscow for interviews. Yuri Gagarin was one of them. He traveled to Moscow in December, taking a train from the frozen north. He had never been to the capital before. He stared out the window at the passing landscape, endless forests of birch and pine, Small villages with wooden cottages, frozen rivers that looked like ribbons of glass. When he arrived in Moscow, he was taken to a nondescript building in the center of the city. No signs, no identification, just a door with a guard. Inside, he was led to a conference room. A panel of stern-faced officials sat behind a long table. Military scientists, bureaucrats. They asked him questions. Why do you want to go to space? Yuri thought carefully. He could have given a patriotic answer. He could have talked about serving the motherland, about defeating the Americans, about the glory of the Soviet Union. But Yuri was honest. I want to see it, he said simply. I want to see what Earth looks like from space. I want to know what's out there. I want to be the first. The officials exchanged glances. One of them, a gray-haired general, smiled slightly. Good, he said. We don't want liars. We want pilots. Yuri passed the interview. Then came the physical tests. The medical exams were exhaustive. The doctors measured everything: his height, weight, lung capacity, heart rate, blood pressure, reaction time, eyesight, hearing. They drew vials of blood. They x-rayed his bones. They examined his teeth, his ears, his skin. Then came the harder tests. They put him in a centrifuge, a massive spinning machine designed to simulate the G-forces of a rocket launch. Yuri was strapped into a seat inside a small cabin at the end of a long arm. The machine began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, and the force built up. 2 Gs, 3 Gs, 4 Gs. Yuri's body felt like it was made of lead. His chest was crushed. His vision began to tunnel. The edges of his sight turned gray, then black. He could barely breathe. Stay conscious, a voice said through the intercom. Do not pass out. Yuri gritted his teeth. He focused on his breathing. Slow, steady, in, out. The force increased. 5 Gs, 6 Gs. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it would burst. His face was pulled back in a grotesque grimace. Drool ran from the corner of his mouth, but he did not pass out. He endured. Finally, the machine slowed. The pressure eased. Yuri gasped for air, his lungs burning. The door opened. A doctor leaned in. How do you feel? Yuri managed a weak smile. Ready to go again. The doctor laughed. You're insane. I like that. Next came the isolation chamber. This was a test of psychological endurance. Yuri was placed in a small, soundproof room, about the size of a closet. No windows, no light, no sound, just darkness and silence. He was given food and water, but no way to tell time. No books, no radio, nothing. He sat in the dark for 10 days. Most people would go mad. The human mind needs stimulation, light, sound interaction. Without it, the mind begins to create its own reality. Hallucinations, paranoia, panic. But Yuri had survived worse. He had survived the Nazis. He had survived starvation. He knew how to quiet his mind, how to wait. He slept. He exercised. Push-ups, sit-ups, stretches in the confined space. He sang songs to himself, quietly, just to hear a voice. He thought about his wife Valentina and his daughters. He thought about flying. He thought about the stars. When the door finally opened and light flooded in, Yuri blinked and smiled. "Is it time?" he asked. The doctor shook his head in amazement. "Your heart rate barely elevated. You showed no signs of stress." "How?" Yuri shrugged. "I was just waiting." Waiting is easy. Out of the thousands who had been screened, 20 men were selected. They were sent to a secret training facility outside Moscow called Star City. This was where they were trained to become cosmonauts. This was where Yuri would prepare to leave Earth. In September 1962, NASA held a press conference in Houston, Texas. The room was packed with journalists, their cameras flashing, their pencils scribbling furiously. At the front of the room, 9 men stood in a neat row, dressed in dark suits and thin ties. They looked like insurance salesmen or engineers. Serious, clean-cut, unremarkable. But these were not ordinary men. These were the new 9A, NASA's second group of astronauts, selected to fly the Gemini and Apollo missions. One of them was Neil Armstrong. He stood at the end of the row, his hands clasped in front of him, his expression neutral. He did not smile for the cameras. He did not wave. He simply stood there, calm and composed, while the flashbulbs popped and the reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Armstrong, how does it feel to be selected as an astronaut?" Neil blinked. He considered the question carefully, as always. "It's an honor," he said simply. "I'm looking forward to the work." The reporters wanted more. They wanted excitement, drama, emotion. But Neil gave them nothing. Just professionalism, just focus. He had almost not made it. His application had been submitted late, past the official deadline. By all rights, it should have been rejected. But someone at NASA, no one ever found out who, had quietly slipped his application back into the pile. A small act of grace that changed history. Neil's selection was based on his record as a test pilot. He had flown over 200 different types of aircraft. He had logged over 2,500 hours of flight time. He had flown the X-15 to the edge of space. He was calm under pressure. He was methodical. He was brilliant. But more than that, he had something intangible. Something the NASA psychologists called the right stuff. The ability to stay calm when everything is going wrong, the ability to make life or death decisions in seconds, the ability to accept risk without letting fear control you. Neil moved his family to Houston. His wife, Janet, and their 2 young children, a son, Rick, and a daughter, Karen, settled into a modest house in the suburbs. Life as an astronaut family began. But there was a shadow over the Armstrong household, a grief that Neil carried but rarely spoke about. 2 years earlier, in 1962, their daughter Karen had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. She was only 2 years old. The doctors did everything they could, but the tumor was inoperable. Karen died on January 28, 1962, just a few months before Neil was selected as an astronaut. Neil did not talk about it. He did not cry, at least not in public. He buried the pain deep inside and focused on his work. It was the only way he knew how to cope. Janet worried about him. "You have to let it out," she said. "You have to grieve." But Neil shook his head. "I am grieving. I'm just doing it my way." His way was to work, to train, to prepare, to focus on the mission. The training for astronauts was grueling. Neil spent hours in simulators, learning to operate the complex systems of the Gemini spacecraft. He trained in underwater tanks, simulating the weightlessness of space. He studied geology, astronomy, orbital mechanics. He practiced spacewalks, wearing a bulky pressure suit, moving in slow motion through the resistance of water, and he waited for his turn to fly. In 1966, his chance came. He was assigned as the command pilot for Gemini 8, a mission to dock with an unmanned target vehicle in orbit, the first docking ever attempted. The mission launched on March 16, 1966. Everything went perfectly at first. Neil and his co-pilot, David Scott, successfully docked with the target vehicle. It was a triumph. But then, disaster. The spacecraft began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. Something was wrong. One of the thrusters had stuck open, firing continuously. The spacecraft whirled like a top, faster and faster. The instruments blurred. Neil and Dave were pressed against their seats by the centrifugal force. They were seconds away from blacking out. "We have serious problems," Neil radioed calmly. His voice was steady, almost monotone, even as his spacecraft spun out of control. He analyzed the situation in seconds. The problem was not the docking. It was the spacecraft's attitude control system. He had to shut it down. He reached for the controls. His hands moved with precision, flipping switches, adjusting settings. He fired the re-entry thrusters, normally used only for returning to Earth, to counteract the spin. It worked. The spinning slowed, stopped. The spacecraft stabilized. "Crisis over," Neil said simply. But because he had used the re-entry thrusters, the mission had to be aborted. They splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, far from the planned landing site. Some people called it a failure, but NASA called it a set. Neil Armstrong had kept his cool in a situation that would have killed most pilots. He had solved the problem. He had brought his crew home alive. The mission controllers took note. "This is the guy you want flying to the moon," one of them said. "He doesn't panic, ever." Neil didn't see it that way. To him, he had just done his job. Nothing more, nothing less. But inside, a seed had been planted, a realization. "I can handle this. I can go all the way." April 11th, 1961. Evening. Yuri Gagarin sat alone in a small room at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The room was sparse. A single bed, a desk, a chair. The walls were painted institutional green. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling. Outside, the sun was setting over the vast flat steppe. The sky was turning orange and purple. In the distance, Yuri could see the outline of the R-7 rocket, standing on the launch pad like a giant metal cathedral. Floodlights illuminated it against the darkening sky. It looked beautiful, terrifying. Tomorrow morning, Yuri would climb into that rocket. Tomorrow morning, he would leave Earth. If everything went according to plan, if the rocket didn't explode on the pad, if the capsule didn't burn up during re-entry, if the parachute deployed, if. The engineers had been honest with him. They gave him a 50/50 chance of survival. The technology was new, untested, rushed. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier, had demanded that they launch before the Americans beat them. He had said, "Show the world that we are superior." So the engineers had worked around the clock. They had cut corners. They had skipped safety tests. They had built a spacecraft that would keep a man alive in space for a few hours, but had no way to bring him home safely. The re-entry system was theoretical. The heat shield was untested. The parachute was a guess. But Yuri was not thinking about that now. He was thinking about his daughters, Yelena and Galina, 5 years old and 1 year old. He had held them this morning, kissed their soft cheeks, memorized the smell of their hair. He was thinking about Valentina, his wife. She had not cried when he said goodbye. She had been strong, as always, but he had seen the fear in her eyes. "Come back to me," she had whispered. "I will," he had promised, but he wasn't sure. He honestly did not know if he would survive tomorrow. He sat down at the desk and pulled out a piece of paper. He began to write. "My dear Valechka, I am writing you this letter that you will probably never read unless something goes wrong. I fully believe that nothing will because the technology is reliable and almost foolproof. But if something does happen, I want you to know that I did not suffer. It will be quick. I want you to be strong. Raise our daughters to be brave and kind. Tell them about me. Tell them that their father loved them very much. Do not grieve too long. Find happiness again. You are still young. You deserve to be happy. I love you. Always." Uraha folded the letter carefully. He placed it in an envelope and sealed it. He wrote Valentina's name on the front. Then he lay down on the narrow bed and closed his eyes. He did not sleep. He could not. His mind raced with images: the rocket, the stars, the earth, his family. But beneath the fear there was something else. Excitement, wonder, anticipation. Tomorrow I will see what no human has ever seen. Tomorrow I will go where no one has gone. Tomorrow I will touch the stars. He smiled in the darkness. April 12th, 1961, 5 a.m. It was still dark when Yuri was woken by a gentle knock on the door. "Time to get ready, Yuri Alexeyevich," a voice said. He dressed in simple clothes, a blue training suit, soft boots. He ate a light breakfast. His stomach was tight with nerves, but he forced himself to eat. He would need his strength. At 5:30 a.m., the doctors came to prepare him. They led him to a medical room. They painted his chest and back with iodine, marking the spots where sensors would be attached. They placed electrodes on his skin, small silver discs connected to wires that would monitor his heart rate, his breathing, his body temperature. Then came the spacesuit. It was bright orange, made of rubberized fabric. It was bulky and stiff. It smelled of rubber and glue. The helmet was white with a large faceplate. When they sealed it, Yuri felt suddenly isolated, cut off from the world. He could hear only his own breathing, loud in his ears. They helped him into a van. He sat in the back, strapped into a seat, the spacesuit awkward and uncomfortable. The van drove slowly across the steppe toward the launch pad. Through the small window, Yuri watched the sun rise. The sky turned from black to deep blue to pale gold. The first light touched the top of the rocket, making it gleam. The van stopped at the base of the launch tower. The door opened. Yuri climbed out. He stood for a moment, looking up at the rocket. It was enormous, 38 meters tall, gleaming in the early morning light. At the very top, barely visible, was the small spherical capsule. Vostok 1 is home for the next few hours. A crowd had gathered. Engineers, technicians, military officers, cameras. They applauded as Yuri walked toward the elevator that would take him up the tower. Sergei Korolev, the chief designer, approached him. He was an older man, heavy-set, with sad, intelligent eyes. He placed a hand on Yuri's shoulder. "Are you ready?" Korolev asked. Yuri smiled. "I was born ready." Korolev's eyes glistened. "Come back safe, my boy. I will." Yuri stepped into the elevator. It began to rise, creaking and groaning, higher and higher. Yuri watched the ground fall away beneath him. He saw the faces below getting smaller. He saw the vast steps stretching to the horizon. At the top of the tower, a technician helped him into the capsule. It was tiny, barely 2 meters across. There was just enough room for a seat, a control panel, and Yuri. The walls were padded with felt. A small porthole offered a view of the sky. They strapped him in. Metal chains clipped to his harness. He could move his arms and head, but his body was locked in place. "Good luck, Yuri," the technician said. His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you, my friend." The hatch closed. Heavy bolts turned. The sound was final, absolute. Yuri was alone. He took a deep breath. He looked out the porthole. The sky was bright blue, beautiful. He heard the voice of Korolev crackling over the radio. "How are you feeling, Yuri?" Yuri smiled inside his helmet. "I feel excellent, Comrade Korolev. Everything is fine. How are you?" There was a pause. Then Korolev's voice, softer now. "I'm worried, my boy. Very worried." "Don't be," Yuri said gently. "This machine you built, it's a masterpiece. It will work perfectly." "I hope so. I pray so." The countdown began. Day Sayat, Devyat, Vozum. 10, 9, 8. Yuri's heart rate increased. He felt the adrenaline flooding his system. His breathing quickened. Sem. Shest. Piat. 7, 6, 5. He thought of Valentina, of his daughters, of the sky, of the dream. Chetir. Try. Dwa. Odin. 4, 3, 2, 1. Pusk! Launch! The world exploded. The roar was beyond anything Yuri had imagined. It was not just a sound, it was a physical force. A wall of pressure that pressed against his entire body. The rocket shook violently. Everything vibrated. His teeth chattered. His vision blurred. But through the chaos, Yuri felt something else. Joy. He grinned. He laughed out loud. "Poye Kali," he shouted. "Let's go." The rocket lifted. Slowly at first, then faster. The G-forces built. Yuri's body pressed into the seat. His chest compressed. Breathing became hard. Through the porthole, he saw the earth falling away, the launch pad, the step, the horizon. I see Earth, he radiated. It's beautiful. How beautiful. The first stage separated with a violent bang. For a moment, Yuri was weightless. Then the second stage ignited, slamming him back into the seat. Higher, faster. The sky outside turned from blue to deep indigo to black, and then silence. The engines cut off. The roar stopped. Yuri floated. He was weightless. His arms drifted in front of him. The restraints held him in place, but he felt like he was falling and flying at the same time. His stomach lurched. He looked out the porthole. The Earth. It filled the window, a glowing blue sphere wrapped in swirling white clouds. The horizon was curved. The atmosphere was a thin, delicate line of light blue separating the planet from the blackness of space. Yuri began to cry, not from fear, from overwhelming awe. "The Earth is blue," he whispered. "How beautiful it is, so beautiful." He orbited the planet once, 108 minutes, one loop around the world.